guys, it's DJ with ANSgear.com, and this is the detailed breakdown of the all-new Geo 3. To start the breakdown of the Geo 3, we're going to go ahead and remove the grips. There's 2 screws on each side, so you're going to remove those using the second from the smallest Allen key. Simply just go ahead and make sure the Allen key is all the way in the screw, and then go ahead and remove those. Now that we've removed the grip screws, we can go ahead and take the grips off. They are going to be a little tough. You're going to have to kind of pop them off these little posts here that are on the grip frame. Go ahead and feed those through and pop the other side off. Now you've got your grips removed. On this side of the gun, you're going to have access to the battery. If for whatever reason you want to change out the board later on with an aftermarket board, you're going to do it from the other side. And there's the 3 screws that hold the board in place. Now back on this side, you're going to see, again, the battery, but also there's 2 sets of wires. There's going to be the double black wires here. They're going to be your solenoid wires. The double black is going to be your solenoid wires. And then there's also going to be a set of 4 wires, and that's going to be your eye wires. Now, from the factory, they usually come a little bit tucked underneath this metal piece of brace here in the frame. You can use an Allen key to kind of pull them out. You want to be careful when you're unplugging that from the board because you can pull those wires out of the white plug. So you want to be very careful when you're pulling those out. Next, you're just going to go ahead and pop the macro line out. You simply do that by holding the collar on the macro line back and pulling the macro line. It's a compression fitting, so you'll be able to get it out that way. Next, what we're going to do is pull out the grip frame screws. There's going to be one here in the front, and then there's actually one on the inside of the grip panel on this side here. So you're going to use your Allen key and just take your time. Again, you don't want to force it, or you want to make sure that the Allen key's in there. You don't want to strip out any of the heads on the grip frame screws. Now that we've got the grip frame screws removed, the one in the front and the one in the back, we can go ahead and slide the frame down. Be careful of the wires. You don't want to get them caught on the inside of the frame while you're pulling it away. Now, you don't have to fully take out the rear grip frame screw that normally sits here. If you want, you can loosen it, leave it in place, and slide the frame back and out. If you feel uncomfortable doing that, you can fully remove it like I have, and then just put it all the way back in like a normal grip frame screw. Now that we've got the frame off, let's take a little bit of a closer look at what you have here. You've got the 2012 pops on off. That's going to allow you to turn your gas on and off by simply pressing that button, pulling forward for off, and pressing it backwards, and it'll lock into place, and then your gas is on. On the top here, you can see the 2 screws that hold the trigger carrier in place. You can pop those out, and this is how you're going to be able to change out a trigger if you want to. Simply pull these little screws out. And the trigger, this is actually going to be your return. It's not really a spring, but that's what's going to give you your return pressure, is that piece there. And it's going to slide right out the top just like that. Now that you see the trigger outside, if, like I said, you were replacing the trigger, what you can do is on the back side of the trigger, you have this small Allen key that fits right in there. You undo that. That's going to allow the trigger pin to slide out of place, and you can remove the carrier that this is attached to and replace the trigger. And then simply to put that back in, you're going to just go the opposite direction, slide the trigger back in place, put those screws in place, and then you're all set. Now that we've gone over what's in the frame itself, we can go and take a closer look at the rest of the gun. We've got the SL3 inline regulators. It's probably the best design that they've come out with since they've started coming out with their guns with their own regulators on them. To break this down, you simply go like that. It's going to allow the piston to come out and the mainspring. Just sits over that. And then to get the rest of the internals out, you're going to simply take your Allen key and turn it all the way in, and then you just push it through. Now, this actually breaks down even further. You would take the Allen key you just used to remove this, put it in here, and take an Allen key and put it through there, and twist. And that's going to separate these two pieces here. Inside here, you're going to have your reg seat. Now, basically what that is it's what controls the output pressure of the regulator. So if ever your regulator is not regulating properly, then what you're going to want to do is change out the reg seat by breaking this down and then changing it. For even more detailed instructions on how to replace the reg seat, you can look inside your manual, and it'll give you even more detail on how to change that piece out. Now that we've taken a look at the regulator and what's going on inside that, we can get a closer look at the bolt system itself. Again, there's no tools required to get this back cap out of the Geo. And that's going to be your bolt guide. Now, to get the bolt out and the can, what you can do is take one of your larger Allen keys. Be very careful. You don't want to scratch anything on the inside. Just help push it through, and then you can reach in there and just slide it right out the back. To get the bolt out of the can, you're simply just going to press backwards on it, and it's going to pop right out. Now, the Geo 3 comes with two different bolts. The one that's installed when you get it from the factory, and then a second one that's included in your gun case. Now, they're identical except for the tips. You can see that the one that's in my right hand here has got a rubber tip on there. That's going to be great for like brittle paint. It's going to have a nice soft surface that's going to prevent you from breaking that brittle paint, whereas this face is going to be a little rougher, a little harder. It's going to be used for the majority of your paints, but if you have real brittle stuff, you're going to want to use the one with the rubber tip. The way this gun works is it's actually got an all-new solenoid design that you have the bolt speed control. Now what that does is you make the adjustment, and it's basically a flow control. As the bolt moves forward, gas is exhausting through the solenoid, and by adjusting how fast that gas can exhaust, it controls how fast the bolt moves forward. So if you slow down the exhaust, it's going to slow down the bolt. If you speed up the exhaust, the bolt's going to go faster. So you can either get a higher rate of fire, or you can slow it down and get a smoother operation, or anywhere in between. It's fully adjustable by you. Now when this gun is operating inside the marker, at its stationary position, you're going to have the bolt in the back position. The spring guide, the guide is actually, it's got a spring on it. You can see the movement there. It's going to be pressed fully back. You're going to have two inlets of gas, one in the front that's actually holding the bolt in the back position, and you're also going to have the shot chamber that's going to be also being filled at the same time. Now, when you cycle the marker, when you fire the marker, the gas that's going to the shot chamber actually gets cut off, so you're not wasting any extra gas. It'll use the gas that's in the chamber and not let any extra out. And then the gas that's holding the bolt back will start exhausting out through the solenoid, allowing the pressure from behind in the shot chamber to push the bolt forward. As the bolt passes the O-ring here, it's going to let the gas release from the shot chamber. As I know it's a little hard to see, but there's an O-ring that sits right on here. And as the bolt passes that, it's going to allow the gas from the shot chamber to go forward through the bolt and fire the ball. And then as that pressure is released, the spring tension that's currently being held back by the pressure is going to release, and this is going to go forward and seal that off again. So it's going to prevent excess gas again from being used. And as the bolt comes back and is reset, this chamber begins to fill again. So that's how the Geo bolt's going to operate. And the solenoid is been totally redesigned again. Instead of being one unit, it's actually two separate operations. The one that's controlling the gas that's going into the shot chamber, and then the one that's controlling the movement of the bolt back and forward. So it's completely independent, and it's a brand new design for the Geos. If you ever had to work on this solenoid, I would not recommend doing it yourself. You're going to want to go ahead and have a Eclipse tech or a local shop do that for you. You don't want to get in there and deal with that yourself. If you do and you damage it, you're going to have to replace it, and solenoids are definitely not cheap. Now, it's going to seem common sense to some people, but to change out your detents or clean your eyes, you're going to go ahead and remove the screw on the eye cover. The eye cover pops off, and then right here you've got your detent. You can remove, replace. If the nubbin's worn or it's been cut off, you can go ahead and replace that. And then you also have your eyes. If they're dirty, need to be cleaned, replaced, this is how you're going to do it. You remove the eye covers on both sides, and then go ahead and run the new eyes. Again, it's super simple to put it back. You just make sure the eye is sitting in the proper position, which is right above that hole that you might have seen there. Sometimes it doesn't want to stay there. You're going to have to hold it and then use the eye cover to keep it in place. And then if the eye cover is sitting nice and flush, everything's in place properly. You put the screw back and just go ahead and tighten it down. You don't need to really crank down on this. Just give it a little snug turn, and it's going to keep that all in place. Something new on the Geo 3, it's going to be a little harder to see because it's down inside here, is going to be the replaceable integrated body filter. What that does is any kind of debris, dirt, liquid, or anything that's possibly in your tank from getting like dirty fills is going to be filtered out and prevent that from damaging your solenoid or the bolt or anything like that. So when you go to different fields, you play events, you can get dirty fills and it can damage your stuff. With this filter in there, that's going to prevent that from happening, and it's going to keep your marker running better, longer. So now that the marker has been totally broken down, we're going to go ahead and put it back together. To get the bolt assembly back in, simply just slide it in place and go ahead and tighten it down, just using your hands. No need to, crank this down with an Allen key. If you do ever tighten it down and you have trouble getting it off, they do have Allen key slots on the outside that will let you, kind of get that off using a tool instead of just your fingers. But for the most part, you're always going to want to tighten that down with your fingers. Now we're going to look at putting the trigger back in. Simply, slides in from the top. You're going to watch for the activation screw because it can hit the top of the micro switch and not let the trigger slide into place. Also, you have the optical eye part of the trigger that you're also going to have to watch out for. Sometimes it helps to move the micro switch lever out of the way so that you can slide it down into place. You can see from the top, again, we have the two screw holes that you're just going to go ahead and put the screws back in place. So there's one. Now you're going to do the other one too. Now that we've got both screws back in place, again, just a little bit of a snug turn. You don't want to crank down on it because if you ever have to take it off again, it could be difficult. You might strip it out. So just a snug turn to get that in place. Next, we're going to go ahead and put the regulator back in position. And simply is going to thread on, and you're just going to turn it all the way on. Just hand tight. Don't have to worry about going any further than that. Next, we're going to put the grip frame back in place. One of the things to watch out for on the Geo 3 when putting it back together is they have the solenoid wires run down the side of the solenoid. When you put the frame back on, it will be possible to pinch the solenoid wires between the body and the frame. So always watch out for that. Make sure that the wires are seated in the channel that they provide you so that everything sits nicely and doesn't get damaged. Now what you're going to want to do is feed both your solenoid wires and your eye wires through the grip frame, out the side, much like that, and then slide the frame into place. Now that you see it's totally flush all along the side, which means that the frame's sitting properly. I didn't pinch those solenoid wires, so that means they're in place properly. Next, we're going to replace the grip frame screws. That's the one in the front here and the one in the back. And the long one is going to go in the back. I'm sorry, the short one's going to go in the back, and the long one's going to go in the front. And then you're just going to take your Allen key and go ahead and thread those in. Now that the grip frame screws are back in place, the short one in the back and the long one in the front, we're going to go ahead and reconnect the eye and the solenoid wires. The eye wires, again, are the one with 4 wires, and they're going to go into the connector on the board that's got a spot for, 4 wires. It seems pretty self-explanatory. Now you're going to just kind of get it into the connector, and I like to use a small Allen key to just kind of push it down into the connector so that it's fully seated into the connector on the board. I don't know how many times I've seen, people having issues with their guns. Oh, it's not working. And then it was just because, their eyes weren't plugged in all the way, or the solenoid wasn't properly plugged in. Now that that's in, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with the solenoid wires. Again, just put it into the plug and just depress it down in. And just like it did with the when you opened it up, go ahead and push the wires kind of underneath this little brace that runs across the frame. I always want to make sure that the wires are not obstructing the micro switch or the optical switch for the trigger. On this gun, you can choose between one or the other. But you want to make sure the wires aren't getting in the way and preventing that from working properly. Next, we're just going to go ahead and pop the macro line back in place. Just go ahead, put it in, make sure it's fully in there. Go ahead and pull on it, make sure it doesn't pop back out, and then you're all set for that. Lastly, we're going to go ahead and pop the grips back in place. Simply just line up the holes for the grip screws, and then just go ahead and replace those on both sides. Now that you've seen how the Geo 3 comes apart and goes back together, go ahead to ansgear.com and pick one of these up. You won't be disappointed. To stay up to date on all the current videos, don't forget to subscribe to the ANS Gear YouTube channel and also like us on Facebook.